We have assisting me in the opining department, and old friends of the show, Warren Ballantyne, nationally syndicated talk host with Empowerment Radio. He's additionally an attorney, again, something for which I've long since forgiven him. Good to have you back, Warren. How are you today?
Alan, always good to talk to you, my friend.
He's also a good friend of the president, something else about which I've learned to forgive him. On board as well, Robert Weiner, Democratic strategist, columnist, and former communications director for Clinton Drug Czar General Barry McCaffrey. He's also former chief of staff for the House Committee on Aging. And Bob has actually never been forgiven by me, and for good reason. Bob, good to have you back.
Alan, good to be with you. But if you're going to forgive Warren Ballantyne, you got to forgive Sharpton for something 26 years ago. You know, in high school, I took.
No. I would if he apologized, but he never has, Bob. Bob, what do you have to do before you're forgiven? Don't you have to apologize? I'm asking a straightforward question. No, Bob. Listen to me, Bubba. Work with me here.
I never apologized for the pajama parade I took part in high school to diss the administration. No, I never apologized for that.
And of course, the two are enjoying such equivalency in their seriousness and sobriety.
Hey, even Time and Newsweek have said Al Sharpton has remade himself into seriousness. So I take him for what his words are.
I have to ask you, Bob. You say he should be forgiven, but isn't forgiveness something that is only rendered after somebody has apologized for what they've done wrong and has demonstrated some degree of contrition? Where am I wrong, Bob?
Only in the time. It's 26 years ago.
So even though he has proactively still insisted that he never did anything wrong, we should still forgive him?
I think you should.
Bob, can't you just give up on something?
Time and Newsweek and say
this is so
remade
silly.
Himself into seriousness on his words now.
You're serious once you take control and you're accountable for what you've done wrong.
All
You're telling me, everybody understand, Bob Weiner is telling everybody here in America, okay, people should be forgiven even if they've never apologized or acknowledged their wrongdoing. Warren Ballantyne, am I off the mark here?
Well, I think you may be off the mark in this case because it's 26 years out, but I will say this. I don't agree with Newsweek in this sense. Look, Reverend Sharpton, Reverend Jackson got a lot of respect for them. I know what they've done in the black community, but the reality of it is this: they both gotten off of racism. That's the reality of it. I mean, both of them, neither one of them have worked a job. They both have started organizations and become millionaires off of racial discrimination in this country, whether that's good or bad.
But Warren, I have to ask you this.
Was Sharpton never a minister?
If somebody, I got to ask you something, though. Even though it happened a long time ago, I don't know that that's really anything but a disconnected measure. If in a very present tense fashion, he has been asked very, very recently, will you apologize for your bad faith accusations of race, when in fact it was empirically verifiable that indeed the incident that occurred or allegedly occurred in fact did not. Tawana Brawley was never raped. She was never harmed. She was never hurt by anybody. It was all a hoax. And Al Sharpton was sued, and he never apologized. And not only did he never apologize, but Warren, even recently, I heard him asked a year or so ago by Geraldo Rivera, who thinks highly of him, will you acknowledge that you were wrong? And he still will not admit to being wrong. Now, I'm asking you, Warren, does the guy deserve to be forgiven for that which he will not apologize?
Hey, at least it's deferred over to you, Warren.
Alan, this is the thing, though. Alan, he at that time, and that's the position that he's taking on this, because when he was going through this with Tawana Brawley, he believed Tawana Brawley. He believed that he was right. So the actions that he did at the time was not done because he knew she was lying. He did it based on the fact that he believed that he was doing something to help this young girl. And that's why he's not apologizing. And I can't fault him for that, because if that was me and I was taking up for you and I believed you and believed that you were wrongly done, Alan, and I find out later that you were lying to me, the time that I was fighting for you, I wouldn't apologize for that because I believed you. I trusted you.
I'm not asking him to apologize for the time during which he actually believed it happened. I'm asking, why wouldn't he apologize for the time when he discovered that it never did?
Well, I think it's because of his conviction at the time that what he was doing at that time.
How is one dispositive of the other? These are not mutually exclusive. We can say the guy shouldn't have to apologize for fighting for that which he believed had occurred. But subsequent to that, once he realized that it had not happened, at that point he has no excuse to not apologize.
Let me ask you this. Is George Zimmerman going to apologize for killing Trayvon Martin?
He should, but even if he doesn't, how would that lessen or increase the requirement for Al Sharpton to atone for his own sins? Otherwise, by that measure, everybody could get away with everything forever, because some other guy already has. You are with Battle Line, Main Street Radio Network. I'm Alan Nathan.
I'm not a liar, and I'm not crazy.
In 1987, this 16-year-old girl claimed she'd been raped by 6 whites, one a policeman. But there were inconsistencies, and 7 months later, an official investigation concluded the story was a hoax. Sharpton was Tawana Brawley's chief spokesman.
Sharpton expressed his doubts in conversations with me, based upon facts that we read out together, facts that was gleaned from the family. Could not have happened.
He did disbelieve it in private, but not in public.
Oh, of course not. Public. Never in public.
If Tawana Brawley was a white girl, you would make us prove how the crime happened. But because she's white, she's got to prove herself to be white. You know it, Phil, and I know it. The fact that you've got 500 black people in this room and every one of us got a different complexion means that white race is a reality in the United States.
I want to thank the people of CBS for that report some years ago. This was on the 1987 case of Tawana Brawley. As one of Al Sharpton's old advisors, you heard Perry McKinnon talk about how the Reverend knew that the case was false, but refused to admit it in public. Every year is Alan Nathan, the militant moderate. Once again, this is the oasis for those who have an aversion to the left, right, black, white, two-dimensional approach. We're covering a number of things. Are those protesting the Zimmerman acquittal upset over the absence of justice or its arrival? Will the Department of Justice file a hate crime civil rights suit against Zimmerman? And how do we separate the legitimately outraged from bad faith racist opportunists like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson? We have assisted me in the Opinion Department, all friends of the show. First, Warren Ballantyne, nationally syndicated talk host with Empowerment Radio. He's also an attorney. Also, we have with us Robert Weiner, Democratic strategist, columnist, and former communications director for Clinton drug czar General Barry McCaffrey. He's also former chief of staff of the House Committee on Aging, and by the way, is also former communications director for both Congressman Rangel as well as Conyers of New York and Michigan, respectively. Gentlemen, thank you both again. I want to give you a chance to respond on this one, Warren, because before the break, you asserted that, one of the reasons why perhaps Al Sharpton shouldn't have to apologize for having been shown to be completely wrong about Tawana Brawley is because while he was defending her, he really believed in her. And my view was that, okay, that's fine, he can believe in her. But then subsequent to that, once the facts really come out, there seems to be no justification for not apologizing once you're made aware of additional facts, once you are a little more enlightened than you were before. But now we hear from Perry McKinnon himself, the close aide of Al Sharpton at the time, telling us that Mr. Sharpton knew that the case was false. Warren Ballantyne.
Well, I'm not going to question Perry's integrity or his truthfulness or veracity here, but I will say this. Sharpton bringing up what he's bringing up with the Trayvon Martin and the George Zimmerman case is valid. I mean, the reality of it is this. Legally, I don't think they're going to be able to reach the standard of filing a civil or federal lawsuit against George Zimmerman. I think the right verdict happened in the George Zimmerman trial because they overcharged the case. He should have been charged with manslaughter from the beginning. But what Sharpton is saying is true. What happened in this case, basically this young boy was killed for just walking down the street, minding his business. And he did everything that we tell our kids to do. If somebody's chasing you, you run. You call for help. And if they catch up with you, you defend yourself. So I don't know if we need to question Sharpton's integrity or his ability to talk about civil rights here. And I think we need to be focusing on the fact that this young boy was killed and George Zimmerman got away with manslaughter, and we need to be looking at the stand your ground law because that's the problem here. This is why he was let go. It wasn't because he didn't do anything wrong. It's because legally he had a right to do what he did because he feared for his life under the stand your ground law.
I tell you, buddy, just as I can't take seriously Roseanne Barr lecturing any of us on etiquette and charm and and demeanor and comportment. So I can't accept
Alan,
Tawana
but
Brawley
even the broke
Sharpton's
clock is- even
moral
the broke
authority
clock,
on
Alan,
this
is right
issue.
twice
I
out of
can't
the
do it.
This is not about Al Sharpton.
It's not.
Warren is exactly right. This kid was en route home, and a guy chases and guns him down. The real self-defense was Trayvon Martin. If I were in that position, I would have scraped and clawed and gotten at the guy. So what if he had some injuries?
Now, this
It was
is where you
Trayvon
and I,
Martin doing the
this is where,
self-defense.
gentlemen, you and I are going to be of similar mind, I think, on more things than you realize. I just have a problem with Al Sharpton because
Well, I
I
don't
hate
care about
hypocrites.
Al Sharpton. I care about Trayvon
despise,
Martin.
no, well, he has influence on this process, so I care about him. If he had no influence, if he was just living in Bombay, sipping on margaritas, fine.
Hey,
But
Alan.
he's very much a part of this. Look, let me run this by both of you, and I want to go to you on this one first, Warren. Now, again, I've always thought that this case absolutely screamed for a trial because an unarmed 17-year-old kid was killed by an older man who was fully armed.
And
I believe that a
with a
court's
gun.
finding, let me finish, I believe that a court's finding would be more enlightened than the court of public opinion because that judgment would be rendered by a jury of knowledge seekers versus slogan followers. I mentioned this earlier. Now,
There should have
as it
been a
turns out, we
directed
got this
verdict on
verdict.
this
Let me
one.
finish. Turns out, Warren, to you now, we got this verdict. It's been rendered. But we still have protesters seemingly transfixed by sloganeers such as Reverend Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, as well as NAAC President Benjamin Jealous, telling everybody that justice has been denied. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but Warren, I personally needed to see a trial before I rendered an opinion. Is it fair to say that these gentlemen and their respective slogan followers really required no such entanglements for their opinion? In other words, is it possible that a lot of these folks were having findings of guilt completed long before the trial even began? Warren Ballantyne.
No, that's not the issue here, Alan. The issue here is this. Look, like I just said, legally, Zimmerman should not have been found guilty of second-degree murder. They overcharged the case. What he did was reckless, and that's the definition of manslaughter. I'm saying that as a former prosecutor. He should have been charged with manslaughter. But the outrage is because this young boy died for no reason. If he had been committing a crime, if he had been breaking into somebody's home, if he had been doing a robbery, then the outrage wouldn't be the way it is. Even a broke clock is right twice a day, Alan, and I love you. I love you because of the fact that you will look at all sides and make a choice based on what's right. What's right here has nothing to do with Sharpton, Jackson, Ben Jealous, or anybody else, because the reality of it is this: even if they didn't exist, this outrage would be here, and you see this not just in black America, you see this in white America, Hispanics, Asians, anybody who believes in the human race. They look at this, and anybody who's a parent looks at this and says, how does this man kill this boy and gets nothing at all? That's the outrage here. Now, Sharpton and them may be the mouthpiece, and they may be out there talking, and look, they
have no credibility and they have no moral authority.
Take a difference with
Alan,
both
that's
you
not
guys.
the
Alan,
point
let me
here.
make a point
Actually, you
here.
know what I'm going to say? Hold on, Bob.
I gotta make a point.
Bob, I owe you a soliloquy, and darn it, I'm going to give it to you. I promise I will. But I got to ask, just to set you up, I got to ask Warren one more question because he's an attorney against something for which I've long forgiven him. Warren, as an attorney, I'll be honest with you, I would have been quite comfortable with a manslaughter one. I think it was kind of odd that the potential sentence for manslaughter is very, very much the same as it is for second-degree murder in Florida, or it can be. I was disturbed by that because, in my estimation, what the hell is the use of having a lower charge if it could potentially have an even higher sentence? So to me, that's intellectually impoverished, but I'll keep that for another show. My question to you is this. I've explained to people, make no mistake about it, but for Zimmerman's myopic decision-making process that night, none of this crap would have happened.
That's right.
But for his bad decision, none of these things would have happened. But as an attorney, you know that something else exists as well, and it's the following. You have increments of judgment that have to be made.
Yep.
Increments. We can all agree that but for his stupid actions at the beginning, none of this would have happened. But once we have Trey Martin, doubling back around, getting a hold of Zimmerman, getting the upper edge on him, if we are to believe, let me finish with Warren. Let me finish with Warren. If we're to believe that indeed that it is possible, and the jury was entitled to take this away as evidence, they were entitled to take this away as evidence. If they believe that indeed Zimmerman's skull was really getting smashed against that curb, then he, at that moment, regardless of his earlier bad acts and bad actions, had the right to care for his existential survival, did he not? And it was in that increment, within that context of that increment, that the jury had grounds to do it. But the thing he started, it means that Zimmerman would have had to have accepted the fact that because he started it, he should just let himself die. Now, Warren, isn't that a component of this whole case? Warren Ballantyne.
Alan,
Warren Ballantyne.
Alan, this is what I said. This is what I've been saying all day. This is what I said just a minute ago. He was not guilty of second-degree murder because of the stand your ground law, because he had a right to defend himself. If we want to believe, and like the prosecutors conceded, that it was a fight and Trayvon Martin was on the top and his head may have been getting crushed. But even if that's not true, let's just look at the manslaughter charge, all right? He was guilty of manslaughter because of what you just said, Alan. If not for his reckless behavior, none of this would have happened. That's the definition of manslaughter. So even if you want to make the argument that he had a right to defend himself because he had to have self-preservation, if he had not done any of the things that he did, none of this would have happened. That's manslaughter. That's manslaughter.
I agree. And Warren, not even you can argue with somebody who agrees with you. Go ahead, Bob Weiner.
You cannot call it self-defense if the guy starts the fight with a gun and a guy fights back. And the other point I wanted to make, Alan, is this. The jury, two of them, one of them says it's late for a kid to be out. The other says that there were riots. These were biased jurors. The prosecutor sucked. And this mixed guy wasn't black. There were no peers for Trayvon Martin's family on that jury. This has a right to be a civil rights case.